is to lead a balanced life where we care as much about providing materially as we care about providing spiritually and about enjoying those things.
Today, I'm with Marissa Polselli from Wordtree to interview her about her soul-led business and how she got started, what she does, and what lights her up.
Hi Trish, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm glad that you wanted to do this. I'm excited to learn about your journey.
I'll start at the very beginning, which was when I was 6 years old and I got my first library card. And for me, holding that little piece of plastic and knowing that it opened up a world full of words, full of stories, full of imagination was magical. And that was pretty much the formative experience of my life. I still am that nerdy little Marissa, 6 years old, holding the library card in one hand and a dandelion in the other hand, and imagining worlds opening up in front of me. And when people work with me, that's who they're getting, with a little more knowledge added in, but that's still who I am in my heart. And that really began my love affair with words. And I do refer to it as a relationship. And that's extremely important to me, to think of words as not just a tool that I use to create something, but as friends. So every morning before I start to write or start to interact with clients, I invite my word friends to come to me and to be present with me, and I thank them for being my allies and my collaborators in helping people to express themselves and to find their true voice. So from that, that very idealistic and fairy tale-like beginning, of course, you grow up, you go through school, and people would always ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? And I'm like, happy? I don't know. And so, independently wealthy, that wasn't in the cards for me at that time. So I went to college, and when I graduated, I was inspired to join an organization that trains people to go to former communist countries and teach English as a foreign language. My dad had been in the Peace Corps, so I grew up with this idea that you travel and you give something back to the wide world. And so I ended up being a teacher, even though that wasn't what I studied for. And the minute I stepped in front of a classroom, I thought, I love this. And I'm good at it. So I did the year in Slovakia, and it was amazing. And then I came back and I got a job in the high-paying world of Catholic education, So I taught Latin. I taught myself Latin, so I was able to teach it. My degree was in theology, so I taught theology. They wanted me to teach Spanish. I didn't speak a word. So I said, hire me, I'm good. And they did. And I went to night school and I taught it the next day. Don't tell any of my former students I was winging it the whole time. I did that for 18 years. And during that time, I also worked with student journalists. And so the connection with writing continued to evolve over that time. And I would help students, I would help graduating seniors with their resumes. I'd help their parents. So there was always that connection, but it wasn't my career yet. After about 18 years working within this system, I really began to be overwhelmed by some of the systemic injustice that I saw there. It was very difficult being a female leader in that environment. I was a department chair, and there were certainly members of my department who did not want to be told by a woman how to uphold the academic standards of the school. And there were things that I witnessed and things that I experienced that were very hard on me as an empath and as a deeply feeling person. It was becoming damaging to my spirituality to continue to work there. So I left and I went into the corporate world for 5 years. I worked as a patient advocate, and that was beautiful because I got to still use my teaching skills. I got to be creative. I worked in the learning and development department as well there, and I got to use my love of words to create learning modules for new hires and to facilitate new hire onboarding. But something was calling me to something different. And I knew that I was meant to actually be doing, not just as a side job or as a favor, something with words. And that feeling became more and more pressing. And one day, I just told my supervisor, I'm not feeling well, I'm gonna leave. And I did, and I stopped at CVS and I got a journal and a pen, and I went and sat in a graveyard. I thought, well, it's gonna be quiet here, no one's gonna interrupt me, right? And I said, I am not leaving this graveyard up until I journal out exactly why I'm so unhappy and what I need to do to get happy. Well, that didn't work because I had to go to the bathroom and I wanted to eat. So, human expediency kind of interrupted that grand plan of giving the universe an ultimatum that I needed all the answers to be revealed to me before I got up from underneath that tree. I did not attain enlightenment like the Buddha in that one moment, but I did go back the next day, and I kept going back until I had my first business plan for my company, Wordtree, and I started it. I went to LegalZoom and got my LLC, and I got a free mentor. I had no experience of what it meant to be an entrepreneur. I was the only person in my family who had done something like this, and I was in my 40s. It wasn't like I was, a young kid starting out, but I knew that that was the right next step for me. And so I started my business, and I still remember being shocked the first time someone paid me to do what to me is just so natural and so intuitive. After about a year, maybe less, I quit. I had been working part-time while I was getting my business up and running. I quit the corporate job and I went full-time into my business. That was in 2016, and I've been going strong ever since. So that's a little bit of my origin story.
Wow. I love that. I love how the tree was part of your business plan.
Yes, absolutely. Trees are magical, and they're communicative. They communicate with each other through a beautiful root system, so they have a language. And they're a place of shelter. They root into the earth, but they also reach towards the sky. And that's what I want my words to be able to do for people. I want them to connect people with their higher self and also deeply ground them into what their true nature is.
Can you tell me about the services that you offer?
Sure. So the heart of all of the services that I offer is that I help people find their voice so that they can create wealth and prosperity through words, with power, with authenticity. And that can look different ways for different people. So if you are a business owner, and I work with many different types of business owners, but I seem to gravitate towards holistic business owners, heart-centered business owners. If you are a business owner, that means your website copy, right? It means possibly a one sheet or your newsletter or some sort of marketing collateral. If you are the CEO of Me Inc., right? You're steering your own career. You're a professional in the career world, then that often takes the form of a resume, LinkedIn profile. I've also worked with people who are speakers on polishing their scripts, people who are putting together courses. But my main three areas that I help people to bring their stories to the fore is through LinkedIn, resumes, and website copy. And the last thing that I'll say about that is the biggest hurdle that I see people facing when they're trying to tell that story, they have something important that they want to say about themselves. There's something in here and there's something in here that needs to come out, but they're looking at a blank page and it feels very overwhelming and very daunting, especially if writing is not your wheelhouse. But even if it is, when you're doing it for yourself, it's a totally different story. So what I love to do with people is step into that space and come up alongside them with my word friends and make it a friendly and joyful process so that they are able to combine their true, authentic voice with strategy for whatever the document is that we're creating and still have it feel like them. And that's really important because none of this is about me. None of it is even really about the client. It's about the thing being written. How does it want to be written? And so my job and my privilege is to come alongside you as a friend, as an advocate, as an ally, and help you connect with the words that are wanting to be said, and to infuse that with the proper strategy. Because people often think, can I be authentic, or do I have to be strategic? And they think of that as two different things. But it's entirely possible to be both at the same time. And I love showing people that you can have an effective resume that gets you interviews. You can have effective website copy that uses best practices, and still have it come from your heart, still have it be your words. And so that to me is maybe a differentiator of the way that I go about my job, as opposed to perhaps another copywriter. For me, it is a combination of being intuitive and marrying that with the intellectual capacity of knowing what is the best strategy to get the intended result here, and not compromising either one.
I love how you keep saying that's intuitive. So it's not just like copied and pasted formulas from a book. It's coming naturally, like flowing through you.
Yes.
Like guided.
That's the way I'm wired, and it's a gift, and I think it's why I'm here on this earth, so I'm grateful for it. But I think that it's something that's especially important today with the prevalence of AI. I'm not an AI hater. I'm not someone who's against technology. I think that it can be a very useful tool for research and for, brainstorming, getting the juices flowing. So I'm not one of those people who thinks that, we have to sit there with like a quill and ink and like parchment paper, and although I own those things, to be honest. But I'm not an anti-technology or anti-progress person. What I am is a person who believes that none of those things can replace the human spirit and human ingenuity. So when I write for somebody, I might turn to AI to help me find keywords for them. But when it comes to writing, that is me and the divine. That is me meditating about that person, immersing myself in their world, asking them the right questions. And when I am in the flow, which I don't let myself write unless I am, because that's not fair to my clients if I just push something out when it's not happening, it is almost like channeling. It is, I know that I am in the presence of the sacred, and that I am being lovingly used by the sacred as a channel or as a vessel for the expression that needs to come through. It's a tremendous privilege, and it's when I feel most connected with my idea of what that big something out there is, right? Or in here, not that it's separate from us, but coming from a Christian background, if you look in the Bible, the story of creation, God spoke and things came into existence. And so the word is creative power. And when I write, I feel like a co-creatrix, I feel like I'm standing right there with, looking at the swirling abyss and saying words, and order takes shape and creation happens. I feel that powerful and that in tune with the divine and with the mechanisms of the universe when I'm writing. For me, it is a very deeply spiritual experience, and I feel very happy when I know that that's they might not phrase it that way, but they'll look at what I've given them. My clients will look at what I've given them and they'll say, something about it jumps off the page, right? Something about it feels good, because it's a combination of the practical result and the energetic result.
Have you ever had any difficulty with finding the voice, or helping a client find their voice? And tell me about any kind of like struggles you had with that.
There are definitely areas that are easier, that the connection is more apparent than other areas. For example, if I am writing website copy for a reflexologist, you know, someone who works with energy in some way, someone who's in the holistic world, that language is already at play. That ethos is already at play. And so that becomes a little easier. It can become more challenging when I'm working with someone who is in a more corporate, more linear role. You know, someone in fintech, someone in banking, someone in real estate. That doesn't mean it's impossible, because there's energy that underlies all of that. If you're a real estate agent, think about what you're really doing. You're connecting people with their home. That's the root chakra, right? That's your sense of grounding. That's your sense of stability. It's your sense of being rooted in this world. And so even if that person doesn't want to use that language, that's the energy and the emotion that I imbue into the wording. So sometimes it takes an extra level of finding that connection to spirit. But I've yet to find a job or a role that, with some thought and with some meditation and with some patience, I have not been able to connect to purpose. And that's the key. Sometimes it just jumps right out at you and it's so obvious. And sometimes the person will even just tell you, this is my purpose, right? I'm like, okay, thanks, I didn't have to pull that out. But other times it's, you know, why did you want to be an accountant? Well, I'm good at numbers. Okay, let's dig into that a little bit deeper. What is it about numbers that you like? And finally, we get to the place where they talk about loving to solve puzzles and loving to see pieces fall into place and a feeling of completion. So it's just a matter of digging until you get there.
I love that. So even though, like, to an outsider, a career could sound completely like, oh, I don't want to do it, something like that sounds so boring, you have a way of bringing out, like, the best parts of it.
There's magic in every career. There's magic and dignity in every type of work, right? From manual labor to someone who's in a think tank somewhere, right? There is dignity in all honest labor, in all honest work. And part of the job of, I think, of humanity, really, but especially of someone who's trying to put that into words, is to recognize that dignity and to honor it when we see it in other people, to look for it when it's not as apparent. And I think that is, you know, when we think of the way the world is evolving and sort of shifting into embracing some of the more feminine aspects, recognizing the spiritual significance of work is something that is coming to the fore. And no one should be excluded from that, right? We have a world that heavily honors monetarily certain types of jobs and then heavily honors emotionally other types of jobs. Stay-at-home moms, right? First of all, I have a problem with that term because they're not always at home, right? They're running 18,000 different places, right? But stay-at-home moms are often, you know, praised for, you made the sacrifice of your career, you're staying home with your kids. There's an emotional praise that goes there, but there's no monetary value that our society attaches to it, even though it's work, right? If you're a banker or an accountant or a lawyer, those professions tend to have more of a monetary reward, but they're often seen as soulless. I think both have both. And once we are able to move into a way of thinking and being that embraces both the masculine and feminine and balances them, rather than the heavily, like for millennia, it's been, at least in the Western world, a male-dominated ethos, right? The corporate ethos. Once we start to balance that a little bit, I think we're going to see a little bit of an evening out, of a democratization of the value that's placed upon work, and that whatever your role is, it deserves both recognition in the practical world that has like dollars and coins, and recognition in the energetic, emotional world.
How has your business evolved since you started?
That's a really good question. it's kind of inseparable from how I've evolved. So I'll try to address them both. And I'll probably be pretty vulnerable in this answer, but I believe in sharing from my heart, because I think that so many experiences are universal, and if the struggle that I've gone through resonates with someone, it doesn't make me feel weak. It makes me feel like I'm giving them assurance that other people have gone through it. So my business, the first year that I started it, I made negative $4,000. That wasn't good. But of course it's the year where, you know, you're getting your LLC, you had to pay for that. You are, you know, I had to get a nice laptop, or at least a serviceable one. There were costs that come with the initial year that aren't every year. And I was building up a client base, and I was charging very little. It just didn't occur to me how to value what I was doing on the monetary plane. I always knew that it was valuable from a spiritual perspective. I knew that the impact I created for people was valuable, but I did not yet have the confidence as an entrepreneur to charge what that was actually worth. And I was cognizant of the fact that I was new as a professional, and I felt that I wanted to be fair and not charge people what someone who'd been in that business for several years was in. Time went on, and I definitely experienced some ups and downs. Most people, I would say that let me backtrack. In almost 10 years of service, there's been about 3 people who haven't liked what I've done, which, considering hundreds of clients, I think that's pretty good. But you know, those 3 people I remember vividly. And it's always the case, right? The human brain is just wired to hone in on the one negative and ignore the 99 positive, right? So I really had to learn to be objective about those experiences, to not internalize them, to still glean learnings from them without internalizing a message that somehow I wasn't good enough. And that's a very hard balance. And I think I still am working on it. But recently, I had one experience with a client who changed the parameters of what she wanted from me midstream. And so when I delivered my first copy of our project, she wasn't as happy with it because she had changed her mind on what she wanted done. And so in the past, I would have blamed myself, and I would have said, I should have guessed, I should have somehow figured out, or whatever. And now I'm saying, okay, the learning here is really set the expectation up front with people. You know, if you change midstream, then what you get is not going to be what you want, because I'm operating on what you told me originally. Like, say that to people up front. So I learned from it without taking into my being the message that I had failed. And that was a big step for me. Like, that was a big milestone. I did grow my business to 6 figures from negative 4,000. And that has been amazing. Last summer, to show you, if you're, you know, an entrepreneur, a business owner, to show you the ups and downs that can happen, I had gotten to a point in my business where my main client took up the majority of my time. I slowly began to take on a leadership role in his company. I ran his content department. And in July 2024, this person decided to change his business model and no longer offer content services and switch into a different kind of service. And so that project came to a close abruptly and without warning. And I lost 95% of my income in one morning. Now, there are many learnings from that. One of them being, I realized that I let myself just get comfortable with having that main client, and that whether things are looking wonderful or whether they're looking sparse, having a diversified client portfolio is a good thing for a business owner. So there's a lot that, in hindsight, I probably could have been doing to soften the repercussions of that on myself, right? But I had to pivot very quickly. And, I didn't even have business cards ordered because I didn't need them. I was doing most of my work for this one person, right? I wasn't networking anymore. I wasn't putting myself out there. And what I really realized is that I would never, maybe not never, but I had no fire lit under me to leave that position because it was safe. As an entrepreneur, getting a steady paycheck is rare and really nice. And it felt very good, and that sense of security felt very good. But I also realized that many of the things I'm most passionate about, I was putting on the back burner. So I truly believe, despite how traumatic that experience was, that it was meant to be to force me out of that position of comfort and probably complacency to reignite my passion for my true purpose. And it's not that the work I was doing there wasn't valuable and wasn't good and wasn't in the realm of my purpose, but it wasn't I don't believe it was what I'm put on this earth to do. I think that what I'm doing now is what I'm put on this earth to do. And so I often need more than a gentle nudge from the universe to make a change. And so I got a less than gentle nudge. It was like, you have no option, right? We're pulling this rug out from underneath you. Figure it out, we'll be here to help, but it's going to be rough for a little while. And it was very, very rough. There were some really panicky moments, but I'm very, very blessed in the support that I have around me, with friends, with family. I'm very blessed with my own sense of spirituality, my own connection with people who are rooting for me, whether they're in this realm or the spirit realm. I lost my dad about a little over 5 years ago, and he was such a fan of my ability to do anything that I have really called on him and asked him to just be with me in a special way as I go through, this time of transition and really trying to focus. Dad, you always thought I could do anything. Be with me as I'm trying to do that anything now. So I'm in a really good place right now of feeling so alive with purpose, so grateful, and so empowered by my ability to persevere through something that there were moments when I thought, can I keep going? And I think every business owner has those moments. So that's why I'm being so vulnerable and raw about portraying them. I want people to know that they're not alone, and that there is an other side to it. And when you stay true to yourself, to your purpose, when you call upon the divine help that is surrounding you in whatever way that works for you, then it's possible to get to that other side. And I'm not saying things are perfect for me now. That's not what this world is. It's not a world of perfection, but it is a world of growth and of learning and of continual movement into the next phase of richness. And I definitely feel like I have moved into a deeper phase, a phase of greater richness. And I'm seeing that in my relationships with my clients, with potential clients. Things are just flowing in such a beautiful way that it just keeps getting better and better.
How good can it get?
Yeah, and that's the question. There's no end to that, right? When you think you've hit the ceiling of that feeling of beauty and that feeling of fulfillment, I think that the divine just expands your capacity. And so it's like being, trading in a smaller cup for a larger cup. And then, you're going to feel the lack for a little bit because you've got more space to fill, right? But then that's to the brim before you know it too.
So do you have anything new that you're thinking about doing, adding to your services?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I am, as your viewers may or may not know, we're doing this interview in the Sanctuary, which is a beautiful oasis of peace and connection and community. It's located in Quakertown. It's on 5.5 acres of sacred land, and it is a place that has space for holistic practitioners and also for workshops. So one of the things that I'm extremely excited about is to be offering workshops again. The teacher in me just sings when that happens. My two most immediate upcoming workshops, one of them will be here. That's going to be on February 22nd. And I can provide you with the links if you want to when you post this, and when I post it, we can put that underneath. But it is a workshop on the poetry of Rumi. And it's going to be co-hosted with a wonderful person. Her name is Sophie Hami of Henna Chakra. And so what Sophie and I are going to be doing is I'm going to be leading this deep dive into the world of Rumi and his poetry. And Rumi, you know, poetry is just this rhapsodic, gorgeous thing anyway, right? But if you want poetry that focuses on a love affair with the divine, which is in you, Rumi's your guy, right? He was this 13th century mystic, and he writes love poetry, but it's all, the beloved is God. However you think of God, right? It's not meant to pull you in. In fact, he's very, very clear. One of his poems, and this is a horrific paraphrase, he talks about how he searched for God in a mosque and didn't find him. He searches for God in a church and didn't find him. And I'm just using the pronoun him as a placeholder, not implying God as a he. He searched for God in, you know, in this different tradition, in a temple, whatever. And then he closed his eyes and looked within, and then he found, that is where he found the divine, right? So very unusual for his time. He was a person who believed in the divine indwelling, and the divine is a beloved who dwells in your soul. And so the poetry really delves into that. And I'll be talking about that while Sophie will be giving customized Rumi-themed henna tattoos to all of the participants. And at the end, she will lead us in dance therapy. She comes from the Sufi tradition herself. And so she will be able to, you know, that sort of ecstatic, free form dance expression that is also a connection with the divine will be the way that will bring that workshop to a culmination. So if you are interested in poetry and just sort of a delving into the beauty of connection with the divine, if you want a gorgeous customized henna tattoo and you want to be involved in sacred dance as well, sacred movement, I invite you to join us. It'll be here at the Sanctuary, February 22nd. My other upcoming workshop is actually an online workshop. It's on March 1st, and it is called Making Friends with Words for Heart-Centered Business Owners. So this is specifically for people who are writing their own business copy. You're writing your own website, you're writing your own newsletters, you're writing your own company page somewhere, your own one sheet, your own brochure. And you care about the energy of it, right? You care about the way those words come across, how the words that portray you to the world sound and feel. You want to connect with your tribe, with your people. But sometimes, again, when you're doing that for yourself, it's really hard. So this is a hands-on workshop where I talk about revolutionizing our relationship with words from being one that's sort of utilitarian, where we just kind of go into our word toolbox the same way someone who's not good at home repairs goes into their home toolbox, right? You know, like if you're not handy, the toolbox only has a few things in it, and you only go there when you absolutely need to. Like something just fell off the wall. I've got to go find the hammer, right? And then you use it for exactly what it's for, and then you put it back and you don't go back until you need it again. A lot of us have that sort of using transactional approach to words. And when we shift that relationship, when we shift that energy to one of friendship and collaboration, and we cultivate that relationship the way we would cultivate a friendship, it changes the whole dynamic of how we write. So I'll be talking about how to do that, why we should do it, practical tips on how to do it, and then everyone will be invited to bring one piece of business writing. Maybe it's a paragraph on their homepage. Maybe it's their about section on their website. Whatever it is, they're bringing one small portion, and we'll do a guided exercise to try to practice using those principles. And there will be gentle feedback if requested. It's not to put anyone on the spot, but it's to really empower people to befriend words and to rethink the way that we enlist them as allies in our efforts at self-expression. So that's coming up on March 1st. I will have other workshops here at the sanctuary. They will focus on things like connecting with the matriarchs in our family, right? Our ancestors who are women. That's going to be an upcoming workshop. I also will be hosting a series of women in different fields. So the first one is women in arts, and we'll be focusing on Frida Kahlo. We'll be talking about women in science, women in literature, and music. Haven't decided who all of those spotlights will be, although I'm leaning towards Ella Fitzgerald when it comes to music, but we'll see. There will also be, appropriately enough, a workshop on trees. As you know, there's been a spiritual connection with trees for most of my life, and the workshop will be focused on connecting with trees as friends and as repositories of wisdom in our world, and how they can be a source of comfort, a source of strength, and a source of connection for us. That's just a small taste of what's coming up.
What would you tell your younger self about when she was dreaming about being here where you are now? How she can get from there to here?
So the thing that I would tell my younger self is to not believe everything that you think. We all grow up with stories about ourselves, scripts that we learn either from, just society in general, the way the world works. Sorry, I have like a dog hair on me. Or things that we learned, from our families, from our schooling, from our employment, things that we carry with us and we internalize and don't necessarily question. So for me, a lot of those stories were around what women can do and what women are allowed to do. And so, just being very transparent about my own experience. My 18 years as a teacher was within the Catholic school system in Philadelphia, and nothing I am about to say is meant to denigrate that system or that faith system or anyone in it. I'm merely just going to relay my experiences. It is a male-dominated environment. It is a patriarchal system, and my particular experiences included things like, as a leader, as a department chair, speaking in a meeting and having someone make a cat noise when I disagreed with something, that kind of noise, which immediately trivialized everything that I had just said, right? And it just makes you feel like this big. I've had experiences where I was speaking in a meeting and there was a male colleague behind me mocking me, like making faces and imitating me talking. I had an experience where a person who was in my department, and I was the chairperson of this department, did not feel that as a man and as a priest he needed to listen to anything I said about upholding the academic standards of the department. Again, I'm not saying that everyone in the system is like that. These are just things that happen to me. And so for me, there was a lot that I had to overcome, a lot of deep work that needed to happen in order for me to recognize that I was operating from these stories and to examine them and flip that script and really start to look at, is it true that girls have to be quiet? Is it true that what I have to say doesn't matter as much as what someone who has a collar has to say, or someone who has different anatomy than me has to say? How much space am I allowed to take up in this world? Is it the same as the amount of space that a male colleague can take up? Can my voice be heard? These are all things that I had to work through, and I'm grateful that I had to work through them, because having my own voice questioned and at times denigrated has led to my building a life where I help others connect with their voice. So my pain points became my purpose. But what I needed was to examine those stories to get from point A to point B.
Where can people who want to work with you find you? How can they get in contact with you?
So I have a website. It's my name, MarissaPolselli.com. So that's a long Italian name at the end, so we'll be sure to put a link here. I'm also on Facebook as me, as my name. I'm on Instagram, again as me, and LinkedIn, again as me. So I'm on all those platforms. Whichever of those platforms feels best to you, you can DM me through any of them. You can reach out through email. My email is marissa@marissapolselli.com. We'll put these links here for you, but what I really encourage you to do is to think about what your connection with your voice is and how that needs to come through in your life. If you're a business owner, how does that come through? Do you have a website? Do you have a brochure that you're working on? If you're a career professional, what does your resume look like? Is your LinkedIn profile telling your story in a way that is getting you to come up in search results the way you want to come up in them? Does it feel like you, or is it just a replica of your resume, like the online repository of your resume? That's a huge missed opportunity, by the way. So think about the ways that your voice can help you to achieve your purpose in life, and then consider whether it's doing that or not. And then think about whether a conversation can help with that. I do offer consultations. They are free consultations called breakthrough sessions. And I call them that because oftentimes people will have a breakthrough when we start talking about their voice and talking about how they show up in the world and what they feel their obstacles are. In a recent breakthrough session, I was speaking with a woman who was feeling torn between whether she should show up with her voice in one place or another place. She had two potential business paths, and she wasn't sure which one resonated with her and where her voice would be most effective. And through our discussion, my suggestion to her was that there actually is a common denominator between the two paths, and it may be possible. I invited her to consider what it would be like if she combined them. And that was her aha moment. That was her breakthrough moment. And she felt so free after that, feeling like maybe I don't have to pick. Maybe there's another option. And that's what I really love doing with people. I love walking them through the areas where they have felt stuck and inviting them to consider where there might be other options. And after that breakthrough session, there may be a chance for us to work together. And if there is, we'll discuss those as next steps. And if there isn't, then my heart will still be full of gratitude for the conversations that we've been able to have together, and blessings for you, and the hope that we'll stay in touch and you'll let me know how things are going.
Mm-hmm. Great. And tell me that quote again.
So there are two quotes that mean a lot to me, and I'll share them both here. The first quote has to do with your purpose in life, right? And this is something that that I really invite everyone to consider. It's a quote from Catherine of Siena, and it says that if we were who we were meant to be, we would set the world on fire. And so when you're thinking about your voice, when you're thinking about living on purpose and being who you're meant to be, I invite you to connect with that to let go of the old stories and the scripts that are holding you back, and to embrace that purpose, to embrace the goodness and the identity that is within you, the divine that is within you. However you think of that. Some people use words like God, some people use universe or source. The word here, from a wordsmith, I'm giving you permission not to care about the word. The word doesn't matter. It's the relationship that matters. Connect with whatever that is, because the world needs your fire. The other thing that I would leave everyone with as a final note is my favorite, all-time favorite, sorry Catherine of Siena, this comes in just slightly above you, my all-time favorite quote, and it is a Persian proverb. And it says, if you have 2 loaves of bread, sell one and buy hyacinths. And I love this quote because I think that oftentimes in our world, we're asked to pick between feeding ourselves physically or financially or in what's considered a practical way, and feeding ourselves spiritually and emotionally and in an energetic way. And it's almost like these two are set up in opposition to each other. Like you have to pick, are you going to make money or are you going to be a spiritual person, right? And so, you know, this quote brings in balance because it's not telling you, forget about the bread, right? Just sell one loaf. You need one. You need to eat, right? You know, we have families. We have obligations to fulfill. You know, don't just go traipsing off into the wild blue yonder and tell your kids, you know, like, find some cereal. You'll be okay, right? You do need to be practical. You do need to live in the here and now. Unless you have zero attachments to anyone in this life, no one depends on you, then yes, go sit, oh my God. Sit in an ashram. Oh, how's that for a Freudian slip? Go sit in an ashram and, you know, you don't have to worry about coming down from the mountain and you can, like, you know, eat locusts or whatever. But most of us are not in that position. We need to live here and now. We need cars, we need houses and things like that. So the practical is not bad, and it's not mundane, and it's not lesser. A lot of times the temptation with spirituality is to think of the practical as somehow not magical, when in reality, it's where we meet the people that we're called to serve and love, right? So there's magic in the mundane, but it can't be to the exclusion of feeding our soul and nurturing our soul. And so the call here in this Persian proverb is to lead a balanced life where we care as much about providing materially as we care about providing spiritually and about enjoying those things spiritually. And if you're a parent, you're raising kids, they need that example. They need the example of a parent who, yes, is responsible, who pays for tuition and braces and all the things, right? But also cares just as deeply that their voice is heard, that sets an example of what it's like to be an adult who can live joyfully, not just as a slave to, I've got to do this, this is my obligation, got to meet it, and then there's no time for anything else, right? Life certainly can be hard, but it's much harder when we only focus on tasks rather than connection. And the connection is the combining force that shows us the beauty in some of the tasks and also invites us to just be fun sometimes. I invite everyone to know that you're here for a reason. There's a reason that you're here now, in this time that is often feeling so chaotic and so overwhelming, where there's so much polarization. Sometimes we might wonder, oh, I wish I lived in a simpler time, right? And you know, if reincarnation is true, maybe you did, but you're here now too, okay? So the point is that there's a reason. There's a reason that you're here now, and your unique gifts are what the world needs to move from the state of chaos, the state of polarization, the state of unfriendliness and distrust and the illusion of separateness among peoples. Your gifts are what are needed to take us from that to the next level, which is a level that embraces balance, embraces equity and justice, embraces kindness and compassion, embraces unity and collaboration. That's where we're headed. We're living in an incredibly exciting time, and it is a privilege. We've been privileged to help usher that in. And every one of us plays a part, whether you are a mom, a banker, a lawyer, a dad, a stay-at-home mom, a paid workforce mom, whatever category you fall into, however you phrase it, you are needed to help bring us to where we're being called to be. I can't wait to see you there.
Amen.
Amen.